to Southeastern CaroLINES. I am your host, Caroline Fenton, and we are here every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. I will bring you my picks of the day for the SEC slate ahead of us this Saturday. Any betting tips you may need, any information that you may need to make a little bit more of an informed bet for the SEC games of the day. That is exactly what I will be bringing you for the next half hour or so. And we are live from 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. So if you need a place to watch the game today, if you're a Georgia fan in town, don't have tickets for the game, come out to Germantown, come to 312 Pizza Company, grab some pizza, grab some drinks. They'll have the games on all day. They open up at 11. You can buy pizza by the slice. You can buy full pizzas. And if pizza's not your thing, they have sandwiches, they have wings, they have bar food, Chicago favorites. You name it, they have it at 312 Pizza Company. So if you need a place to watch the games today or just a place to hang out, come out to 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. I'll be hanging here all morning, bringing you my picks of the day. So last week was kind of a weird week in college football. It felt like there were so many weird upsets. Teams that we had been high on going into the week kind of blundered a little bit. You saw Kentucky almost lose to a cupcake team in UT Chattanooga, a team that I think we all have been high on. I think we thought, okay, wow, Kentucky has solved these kind of offensive woes. They finally have a passing game after Mark Stoops has been trying to develop a little bit more action in the passing game. It seemed like Will Levis was exactly the guy to come in and do it. But they got stunned a little bit against UT Chattanooga last week. They did end up coming out with a win, but it definitely wasn't as big of a statement win as we would have expected, especially given all the hype that we've heard about Kentucky thus far. Also, Alabama, Florida, the biggest SEC matchup to date. Alabama did not look as dominant as we expected them to be. I believe the line last week was 12 and a half, Alabama minus 12 and a half. And I thought that was easy money. I thought, okay, this is a Florida team that has yet to be tested. This is a Florida team that lost their starting quarterback. This is a Florida team that lost one of the best, if not the best, actually the best tight end in college football, some of the best pass catchers in college football. So it just kind of felt like Florida was due for a little bit of a rebuilding year. New quarterback stepping in, you're rebuilding that offense. But against Alabama, that is absolutely not what we saw. We saw a run-heavy powerhouse on the ground team. And they gave Alabama a little bit of trouble. So I think we learned last week, look, Alabama's not invincible. Alabama has their flaws. I'll pick the Florida game later on in the show, Florida playing Tennessee today. And I'll make my opinions about Alabama football when I make the pick for the game against Southern Miss today. But I think we did see last night that Alabama can be shown that they have weaknesses, and Florida very much so did that last week. But I will get into some of my picks for this week. First up, we've got LSU Mississippi State. So LSU is favored to win this one, minus 175 on the money line. The spread here is 3.5. So if we want to backtrack to 2020 a little bit, this was a very sobering game for us LSU fans. We are coming off of a high of 2019, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, national championship, a 15-0 season, one of the best college football seasons, you could argue, of all time. So, of course, LSU fans are coming into that 2020 season high, knowing that you lost a lot of players to the draft, not expecting a back-to-back national championship season, but absolutely expecting a win against a Mike Leach Mississippi State team that hadn't really thrilled anyone quite yet. And they lost that game. Now, I don't think that this is going to be a 2020 repeat. I don't think that there is going to be a Mississippi State quarterback make their Heisman campaign, because if you think about KJ Costello last year, I think he would have been everyone's favorite to win the Heisman after week one. And then we went on to learn that LSU's defense was Swiss cheese, to say the lightest. But I am going to take LSU on the money line, minus 175. Not great value here. The spread is 3.5. So if you want to get a little bit better value, I would go ahead and take LSU minus 3.5. But I do think Mississippi State keeps this game closer than we may think. LSU obviously has a lot of holes that they need to fill in offense. And I think UCLA really highlighted that LSU has some communication issues. LSU might have some issue with experience about getting rattled very easily on both sides of the ball. We saw that with Max Johnson against UCLA getting very obviously rattled. The communication, both on offense and defense, it was bad. That team just looked confused out there. So they very obviously have some issues that they need to address. Max Johnson does have an accuracy issue, but he has one heck of an arm. He's averaging about 300 yards a game. Keyshawn Butte tied for the most receiving touchdowns in the SEC right now. This duo of Max Johnson and Keyshawn Butte, I think, is going to serve as pretty intimidating for Mississippi State. And I think we all know exactly what to expect from Mike Leach and that air raid offense. If LSU can defend the passing game against Mississippi State, I think that's their key to win. I do think it is going to be close. I would not be surprised if it was within a field goal. Because I think these are two teams that are really, this is kind of a put up or shut up game for both. And it's going to be very telling. It almost feels kind of like a desperate game for both teams. LSU needs to win this game in order to show people, hey, look, last year, 2020, that was a fluke. And we're rebuilding and we addressed the issues that we had on defense last year. But I think that this is a very important game for Mike Leach as well. Mike Leach has not had any kind of statement win on his record, and the season so far has looked kind of lackluster. So a win against LSU at home, I think, could be huge for Mike Leach, but I do think LSU gets it done today. We've also got Georgia coming into town in Nashville facing Vanderbilt. Now, this is for sure going to be a blowout. Georgia is 100% going to win, but the spread here is 35 and a half. And I think that is a huge spread. So I think I'm going to pick Vanderbilt to cover, which sounds odd because Georgia right now, in my opinion, from what we've seen, is the best team in the East. You could argue Florida after their game against Alabama, but we've seen more from Georgia. They've been more battle tested. So right now I feel confident saying that they are the best team in the East. So this is a huge spread, but I don't think that they are necessarily going to go this full game with all of their starters. They've been averaging 48 points per game in the past two games against UAB, against South Carolina, two teams that may kind of be on par, maybe even put South Carolina a little bit above Vanderbilt in terms of their defense. A low scoring 10-3 Clemson game, of course, but Georgia's been able to put up points. And I could see Georgia winning by like 31 or so, but they're going to call the dogs off at some point. Georgia's slate coming up at home against Arkansas, on the road at Auburn, home against Kentucky, at Florida. They've got a tough 4-game stretch coming up. And I don't see Kirby Smart wanting to exhaust their starters with a long road stretch coming up at Vanderbilt, a game that they know that they will win handedly. So I am going to take Vanderbilt to cover, but not by very much. Missouri going on the road against Boston College. This is kind of a weird home-and-home series, Missouri and Boston College. I believe Missouri also has a home-and-home with UMass. So I don't really know what the connection there with the state of Massachusetts and Mizzou is, but we'll take it. Missouri on the road at Boston College. The spread here I've seen go anywhere from 1 to 1.5, 2.5, but regardless, it's not very big. It doesn't give you a whole lot of leeway, though. You can take Mizzou on the money line, -115. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see Boston College get a win at home today. Now, Boston College has been outscored their opponents 124 to 31. That stat alone might make you feel very confident in taking Boston College on the money line. But you have to look at their opponents. They've played Temple, they've played UMass, they've played Colgate, teams that you should put up 124 to 31 points in 3 games in. Missouri is their biggest test so far, and I think we're going to learn a lot about both of these teams here. I think this Boston College defense is going to be staunch, and they're going to have to stop the run. Tyler Beatty has been outstanding for Missouri so far. 2 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown against Southeastern Missouri last week. But I think that Boston College understands, this defense understands that a majority of their success so far this season has been on the ground with Tyler Beatty. Now, Connor Bazelak as an experienced quarterback, starting quarterback for the Missouri Tigers. He's completing about 67% of his passes so far. He has 197 yards, 9 touchdowns, and just 1 interception so far this year. So Connor Bazelak has been outstanding so far for the Tigers. But I think that Boston College is going to be able to shut down that run. They're going to force Connor Bazelak to throw the ball, and I don't think that Missouri is going to find a ton of success there. So I am going to call an upset and say Boston College gets it done against Missouri today. Take Boston College on the money line plus 105 there. Georgia State at Auburn. The spread here is 27.5. You can take Auburn minus 27.5, minus 105. So, I mean, what a slugfest of a game Auburn showed at Penn State. I mean, I was thoroughly impressed by what I saw from Auburn, but it had nothing to do with Bo Nix. Had nothing to do with the way that Bo Nix throws picks, was operating that offense. He had 185 passing yards, no touchdowns. I called it last week. He did not throw an interception, so I do have to give him that. But I said last week, over under on Bo Nix passing touchdowns was 1.5. I said hammer that under, and that's exactly what happened because Auburn got it done on the ground. Tate Bigsby has been outstanding for Auburn this entire season and even in the 2020 season as well. He is carrying that offense on his shoulders. Against Penn State, he had 23 carries, 102 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So I know that Auburn is against a weaker opponent than Penn State. They're going to try and get the passing game going a little bit more, especially going into SEC play. But keep an eye on Tank Bigsby today because I think that they're going to want to put up big points and think that they're going to rely on Tank Bigsby to do exactly that. 27.5 is a tough spread, and Auburn showed that they can hang with the big dogs last week against Penn State. So I am going to take Auburn minus 27.5 here, even though that is a pretty large spread. It's an easy opponent, and Auburn's going to come back and be angry after that loss, that close loss in Happy Valley. Tennessee, Florida today. So I think one of the biggest questions that we have here is who is the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Volunteers? It's Joe Milton, Hendon Hooker, and I apologize if I had missed an announcement for a starting quarterback, but I had said it all week. And then I think that the best possible move that Tennessee can make is to start Hendon Hooker at quarterback. Joe Milton going down with an injury against Pitt, and Hendon Hooker coming in the Tennessee Tech game. And I thought Hendon Hooker had a pretty solid game. He has a little bit more accuracy than Joe Milton. Maybe not quite as quick, but still an incredibly mobile and physical quarterback. And he has the tools, maybe not as strong of an arm as Joe Milton, but he does have the same tools as Joe Milton. And I think if you're Josh Heupel, Joe Milton may be your guy, 100%. But you're going into a really tough stretch down the road, and you want to maintain Joe Milton a little bit more because you know that this Florida defense is going to rough up on him, especially on the run. So I think that the best possible thing is put Hendon Hooker in there, see what he can do, let Joe Milton rest one more week. And then if you're not completely thrilled with what you've seen from Hendon Hooker, Joe Milton feels healthy enough, confident enough to go back out there the following week. Tennessee travels to Missouri next week and then throw Joe Milton back in there. But if I'm Josh Heupel, I am starting Hendon Hooker. Now, the spread on Tennessee, Florida is 18.5. And everything in you might tell you take Florida minus 18.5 because they just gave Alabama the business. Alabama just narrowly escaped with a win against Florida. So you may think, okay, Florida, a team that was able to hang with a national champion favorite at this point, a team that has been able to put up insane rushing yards, both with their running back and their quarterback. Doesn't matter who you put in there, whether it's Emory Jones, whether it's Anthony Richardson, they've got some quick quarterbacks. But I think that Tennessee, from what we've seen so far, has one of the best run defenses in college football. Also, to that point, they have not faced such a strong run-heavy offense in Florida. So this is going to be a huge test for Tennessee's defense. Just how good of a run defense can it be? And I think we're going to see that against Florida. So I do think that Tennessee is going to be able to at least be somewhat effective and starting to run and maybe kind of push Florida to pass the ball a little bit and not rely so heavily on play action. However, I am going to take Tennessee plus 18.5. I'm going to take Tennessee to cover the spread. Emory Jones, Anthony Richardson, whichever one you get, you know that you're going to get a quick quarterback. I would not be surprised to see Anthony Richardson come in later in the game if Florida does feel like they have a comfortable lead. If Emory Jones can't necessarily get it done, they want to switch things up. But I think Tennessee keeps it close in the Swamp, having Cooper Mays back on the offensive line, settling his spot back at center, I think is going to be huge for whoever is in the pocket for Tennessee today, whether that's Joe Milton or whether that is Hendon Hooker, giving him a little bit more confidence in his offensive line, a little bit more of a veteran guy that's been around as he comes back in after leaving the Bowling Green game with an ankle injury. So that'll be great for the Vols to have back as well. Tennessee going into the Swamp, I'm going to take them plus 18.5. I think you consider that my spicy pick of the day because I think everyone has been very high on Florida thus far this season, especially coming off of such an incredible game against Alabama last week at home. We've also got Arkansas, Texas A&M playing at Jerry's World today. This is going to be a very, very interesting game because Arkansas is no longer the Arkansas that we have been used to the past few years. Sam Pittman has been able to turn things around so well at Arkansas and so quickly. I mean, we saw them last season really start to make strides on offense. They went 3-7 in 2020, but it really kind of felt more of like a 5-5 season. A couple games just pulled from them at the last minute with maybe some bad ref calls. But I'm going to actually take Texas A&M to cover here. And this was kind of tough here because I thought maybe Arkansas can pull off the upset, especially beating Texas so handedly so far this season. But I think that Jimbo Fisher understands the SEC West implications this game may have, because Texas A&M right now, coming into the season, I thought, okay, their biggest test, and I think the SEC West, that division was going to be decided in that Texas A&M Alabama game. Now things may change and that may be different, but coming into the season, that's kind of how I saw the season playing out. Jimbo Fisher knows if he loses this game, his opportunity to win the SEC West kind of feels foiled because you lose against Arkansas. Now you have to beat Alabama later on in the season. And I don't know if Texas A&M necessarily wants to put themselves in that position. I think that they want to keep the momentum going, get a win against Arkansas, and continue to work your way up in the SEC East and give yourself the best possible situation in order to take over that division. And I think that Arkansas has an incredibly bright future with Sam Pittman. I think that they will keep this game close, but ultimately Texas A&M will run away with it in the second half. I mean, Arkansas is rushing the ball like crazy. They're averaging 282-ish yards per game. The Aggies can stop the run. They know that that's exactly how Arkansas is going to get down the field, and they can stuff that run. Also, since last season, the Aggies are 7-3 against the spread in their last 10 games. So feel confident taking Texas A&M against the spread here as well. This is really going to be a game in the trenches. And I think that's what you're going to want to keep your eye on is this, both of these teams with such strong, powerful, staunch offensive defensive lines. It's going to be a battle in the trenches. And I think that Arkansas's defense is really going to come into play here. They've been holding their opponents to a 27 to 28% conversion rate on third down. So if Texas A&M wants to get this momentum going early, in order for Texas A&M to cover, they're going to have to get momentum going early and keep it up with every single down. Because I think if Arkansas goes up early, it'll be very easy for Texas A&M to kind of crouch back and start to make mistakes and start to get frustrated. But as long as Texas A&M can get things going early, keep up the energy on every down, continue to get 5, 7, 8 yards down the field on each down, then I think that Texas A&M will end up being successful against Arkansas today. Again, that spread there is 4.5. You can take Texas A&M minus 4.5, minus 108. Arkansas on the money line. If you are feeling an upset for the Hogs, Arkansas plus 175 gets you pretty great value there. My lock of the week, Kentucky at South Carolina. Now, I addressed it a little bit earlier in the show, But Kentucky did not look great against UT Chattanooga. Barely squeaked by again, squeaked by with a win, but they are a much better team than that. Will Levis last week threw 2 interceptions. Their leading rusher against UTC ran for fewer than 50 yards. They just could not get things moving on offense. They couldn't start those fireworks that we've seen from Kentucky thus far this season. So far, Will Levis has thrown for 800 yards, 7 touchdowns in just 3 games. So I think that was more of a blunder on their resume, more than a definitive game to see exactly what this team can do, to see what the personality of this team is. But I think that was just okay. That was a bad game. We're going to move past it. And I think that if you're going to put money on this game, you need to take advantage of this spread. Right now, it's Kentucky -5, -110. That is my lock of the week. Kentucky is going to win big against South Carolina. Luke Doty, who will be starting quarterback for South Carolina today, had 2 turnovers, only 153 passing yards last week against Georgia in their 40-13 loss. And of course, Georgia has a much more intimidating defense than they'll see against Kentucky. But I think Kentucky has the offensive firepower to kind of overcome anything that Luke Doty can get done on offense as well. Now, this is Kentucky's first road game of the season. That could potentially pose some issues for the Wildcats, but I think that they had their kind of sobering moment last week against UT Chattanooga, and they're not going to let themselves make any of these kind of sloppy mistakes again. So again, LSU Mississippi State, I'm taking LSU on the money line at 175. The spread there is 3.5. If you want to get a little bit better value, go ahead and take LSU -3.5. Georgia Vanderbilt, I'm picking Vanderbilt to cover. I think Kirby Smith is going to want to keep his guys healthy, and they go up by enough, a big enough lead that he feels comfortable. He's going to start pulling those starters, and points won't necessarily start to pile up for Georgia. So I do think that Vanderbilt covers plus 35.5, but I do think that it's close to that. I think it'll be 31, 34-point game. Missouri, Boston College. I think Boston College gets it done against the Tigers at home. Boston College's starting quarterback could potentially be out with the season with a wrist injury, but Dennis Crosell, who is coming in his place, he's 21 of 33, 277 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception so far in 2021. I think this backup is going to want to come in, make some offensive fireworks, especially against an SEC opponent. And I think that they're going to be able to stuff Missouri's run, something that they've been able to be incredibly successful with so far this season. Georgia State at Auburn. I think Auburn covers -27.5. That'll be -105, not 105. Tank Bigsby, keep an eye on him. He's been outstanding. He'll continue to be outstanding. And as long as Bo Nix has some of his trouble throwing the ball, it'll be Tank Bigsby's offense, and everyone just follows suit. I'm going to take Tennessee plus 18.5 against Florida. Now, both teams are kind of a question mark at the quarterback position, but I think that Tennessee is able to at least stop a little bit of Florida's run game in order to keep this game closer than Vegas thinks. Arkansas, Texas A&M at Jerry's World. Arkansas has been outstanding so far. This will be a battle in the trenches. I think Texas A&M gets it done and beats Arkansas by 2 field goals, a touchdown or so. So I'm taking Texas A&M -4.5. That value is -108 there. My lock of the week, Kentucky -5, -110 against South Carolina at Williams-Brice Stadium. I think that Will Levis just continues the offensive fireworks that we've seen from him so far. And I think that Shane Beamer does have a very bright future at South Carolina, but it's building. He's going to have to continue to build. And I think this Kentucky team is just far too talented to lose to South Carolina by any more than 5. Those are my picks today. Again, Southeastern CaroLINES is live at 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. Come out to 312 Pizza Company, grab some pizza, grab some drinks, watch the games, hang out here. It's a really great spot right in the heart of Germantown. And if you're looking to find a little extra cash on the side, maybe you're an experienced waitress or waiter or bartender, and even if you're not, 312 Pizza Company is hiring. So if you're looking for something, come on down to 312 Pizza Company, fill out an application. Everyone who works here is incredibly friendly, and it'd be an absolutely great place to work. So again, 312 Pizza Company in Germantown, and that is going to do it for us today on Southeastern CaroLINES. We'll be back next week, next Saturday at 10 a.m. We'll be streaming on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Good luck to all of your teams today, and I hope that all of your locks hit.